and cherished here tonight. Thank you for being a part of the Cameron Art Museum family, because it is a family, and I'm so grateful that you're here tonight. Tonight we celebrate the opening of a new exhibition called 5, which showcases works acquired by Cam over the last 5 years. What am I doing? Reading about glasses. The eye doctor told me that once I turned 40, I would need glasses, and I didn't. But then I turned 45. This work that's in 5, I'm so proud of. It was acquired in many different ways. Through our Compass Giving Society, which some of you are Compass members. I see you here tonight. Thank you so much. If you don't know about Compass, Elizabeth Overton, our Director of Development, is in the back of the room, and she'd love to tell you about Compass. Compass is a really special membership society where you actually get to vote on acquisitions to the permanent collection. So if you see works in the 5 exhibition tonight that you like, if you see works that you don't like, if you join Compass, you get to have a voice in those decisions. So works were picked by our Compass Giving Society, given by generous donors, some of whom are here tonight, and picked by our curatorial team. 5 features a wide range of work from recognizable names like Matisse, Chagall, Dali, and Warhol to North Carolina artists that we know and love, like Fritzi Huber, who's here tonight, Rick Beck. Rick Beck, Rosalia Torres Weiner, and tonight's speaker, Clarence Heyward. This exhibition highlights the proud history of our museum. Are you guys going to clap? Yeah. Our dedication to building a rich and robust collection from our inception. We were a collecting institution from the get-go. From the beginning in 1962. Collections evolve and change just like people. They don't move in a straight line. You know how we grow and change as people. We make decisions, sometimes good ones, some decisions that aren't so good, some decisions that lead to other decisions, and that's the way collections grow and change. And our collection reflects the multifaceted people and the community who has been involved in the museum, as well as the world around us. Being relevant to what's happening in the world around us is so important as we look at our collection. At the core of our collection is a dedication to exploring the people, the places, and themes of the Cape Fear region, and Clarence Heyward's work with its exploration of the Black American experience connects deeply to our past, our present, and our future. I've been watching Clarence Heyward's career since the pandemic, when I first found his work on Instagram. And if y'all aren't on Instagram, you should be. There's a lot of great artistic work that's happening on Instagram. He is a painter and a collagist whose work focuses on how the use of media and historical documentation is used to change perceptions of Black American culture. His incredible work investigates cultural truths, challenges stereotypes, and examines identity. Thank you tonight to Blair Kudrow and Vic Roberts, supporters of the museum who sponsored tonight's talk. Thank you to our Director of Lifelong Learning, September Krueger, for leading tonight's conversation, and thank you to Clarence. But most importantly, thank you to each of you for being here tonight. Thank you for supporting Cameron Art Museum, for making sure that this museum, this regional art museum that does not have an umbrella institution, can survive and is here and is thriving. We may not have an umbrella institution like many regional art museums across the country, but our umbrella is you. Our community is our umbrella, and we are so grateful to each and every one of you. If you are on social media, please follow Cam and tag us if you are here tonight. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Clarence Heyward and September Krueger.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Heather, for those words. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for coming out and joining us this evening. My name is Krueger, Director of Lifelong Learning, and I am sitting here with Clarence Heyward. It is such a pleasure to have you in our company tonight. I'll take a quick moment to remind everyone to turn off your cell phones if you haven't already, and so that way we can make sure that we give our fullest attention to Clarence in the next hour. So I love that Heather took a moment to mention Instagram with Clarence because his body of work probably goes back in its entirety on Instagram. We are with a contemporary artist who is he's burst onto the scene a few years ago, and he's just skyrocketing in terms of his work in the art world. I'll give you a little bit more about his background. So as Heather said, Clarence is a painter and collagist whose work explores notions of the Black American experience. His work investigates cultural truths, challenges stereotypes, and questions identity. Clarence uses persons of color as subjects in his work as homage to his culture. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Heyward studied art education at North Carolina Central University. He spent 12 years in the trucking industry, first as a driver, then as a route designer, because he was concerned that he couldn't make a living with art. Here he is today. So in 2019, with the support of his wife, Desiree, will you raise your hand, Desiree, and let us all know you are here? It's such an important part of this story. So with the support of his wife, he began his journey as a full-time artist. He's best known for his dynamic and fresh take on figurative art. Heyward was the 2022 Artist in Residence at North Carolina State University. He currently lives and works in Raleigh, and his work has been exhibited across the country from the North Carolina Museum of Art, the Dallas Art Fair, and the Museum of Science and Industry, Chicago, among others. Heyward describes his art as a way to process and explore the world in which he lives. We're going to get a feeling as we look across the images behind us and in the conversation ahead. So again, thank you so much for being here, Clarence.
Thank you for having me.
And let us go ahead and put that first image on screen. Is it complying now? All right. There we go. So, who is in this work? Who is the subject of this work?
We know this. All right, so in my exploration of the media, I was listening to a lot of podcasts and a lot of radio, and this piece was done in homage to Charlemagne, the god, who was a very captivating figure, to say the least. He had a lot of controversial moments, a lot of things I agree with him on. I was actually exploring this pattern, like the stripes, in my studio, and I used him as the subject because I figured he was a very cautious individual, like in the things that he was saying. And I wanted to play with that color scheme of yellow. I've never used yellow and black together before. To me, it read like a yield sign. Yeah, and I just did it with the variegated leaf, which represents in my work the world that we live in. And it's like, as a black man in the media, he has to be very cautious of the things that he does and things that he says. Me and my wife read his first book together. And he was just like real influential at the time, so I wanted to do something in dedication to him. And I made this portrait, and it sat in my studio for a couple months. And then there's a gallery in Durham that sells my work from time to time. So I don't sell a lot of work in North Carolina because my primary gallery is in Santa Fe, and I work with galleries in like New York and Chicago. And this particular gallery I gave them 4 paintings like early on in the year, and they sold them. And then they called me and said, "Hey, we need something else." And I said, "I have this one painting," and he was like, "Just bring it." So I bought it. And like 2 days later, I guess the camera picked it up because he was just like, "Do you have something else?" I don't have anything, so he had to wait a while to get something else. But that's how it ended up in the camera. He called me and said, "Congratulations." Thanks.
Because clearly Heather was already stalking you on Instagram. What you're doing. And again, just early on in your career. And in that, we're also hearing gallery representation right away, some of the symbols that you are already finding as tools to work with in terms of color, this material that you talked about with the variegated leaf. So thank you for introducing us to the gentleman who's the subject of the work, but let's back up a little bit and find out a little bit about you as an artist. So, what were some of your early interests as an artist? Did you have access to art materials?
When you say early, are you talking as a child? Or
Yeah, let's go back. Let's go back.
So, as a child, I had crayons, colored pencils. So, growing up, primarily what I did was draw. So, my medium was just, number 2 pencils. In high school, transitioned to charcoal, and I did some oil painting in school. I went to Performing Arts High School in New York. I went to LaGuardia, so I had access to all the materials there. We did sculpture, we did everything, but I always just gravitated towards like charcoal, black and white drawings. And then when I went to Central, I did a little bit of oil painting, but still primarily drawing. I didn't get into acrylic until 2019 because as I started to venture out to museums, besides Charles White, I didn't see a lot of drawings. It was almost like drawings were a prerequisite for paintings. So I just buckled down and started painting, and then found my voice through painting.
It seems like it was a really natural transition though for you.
Yes.
That and hard work. So tell us a little bit about your studio practice.
Oh man, my studio practice. So it officially started in 2019 when I got a residency in Raleigh. Should I start from how I even got that residency? So I quit my job in 2019, and I went to YouTube and started YouTubing how to be an artist. It's funny, but it's not, because in school they don't teach. They teach you how to. They give you the skills to be an artist, but nobody gives you like a business plan or like a model of how to survive in the art world. So I just started Googling it and watching everybody's YouTube videos. Like I saw people crafting. I was taking everybody's business plan to see what would stick. And I found out about residencies through YouTube. So then I started Googling residency programs in Raleigh, and I found one and I applied. And surprisingly enough, I got it. And after that, I got a studio outside of my house. And they give you a free studio for a year, and at the end of the year you have a show. And for the first 6 months I went to the studio every day, and I drew celebrities and painted random objects because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just at a studio and I was happy. But 6 months in I met with the director because in another 6 months I was scheduled to have an exhibition in the gallery space, which is pretty big. And she saw what I was working on, and she was like, well, what is this? I'm like, this is all my new work. She was just like, no, seriously, like, what is this? This is what I got. She was like, nah, this is not gonna cut it in the gallery. You need to figure out what you're gonna say and how you're gonna say it. And it was the first time anybody ever challenged me like that, because I'm like, I'm talented, yeah, but I didn't really know what to say or how to say it. So I started thinking about my life and my earliest memories, and the one that kept coming up was, don't laugh, because it's serious. It was the first time I realized I was black. So I grew up in Brooklyn in the 90s, so if you've seen the movie Crooklyn, that's my life. I came down south in the summer times, played outside in the streets, but everybody in the neighborhood was black. Even the people who weren't black were black. So it never dawned on me race really until I was 8. And my stepfather sat me down and made me watch this movie called Mandingo. It was like the worst movie I've ever seen in my life to this day. I will not watch it. But when I had to think back about my life and like something, like a moment that changed my life, it was that movie. So now I'm in the studio and I have 6 months to make a show. I decided to make a show on that moment, and I called it Descendants of Sire. Oh no, these are the collages. One more place, we go back one. No, go up one. Okay, so this is a couple pieces from Descendants of Sire, but if you go to my website, you can see the whole show. talked about my introduction to what it meant to be black, and it explored like my childhood all the way up until adulthood. This is also my first museum acquisition. The National Museum has that one, and the city of Raleigh bought that one. But yeah, so it was the first time I made work examining my life, and ever since then, that's all I've done is make work about my life experience here. But now you can go back one. So my bio says collages. During that first residency I was painting all day, every day, and I kind of needed a break. I still wanted to make work, but I didn't want to paint every day, oddly enough. So I picked up collaging, and collaging also changed my life because the pandemic hit, and art was my job, right? So I started this thing on Instagram where every Friday I would release one collage. The collages were $500, and I would release it every Friday at 10 o'clock. And during the pandemic, pretty much every Friday at 10 o'clock, I sold a collage. So it was income for me. I had a business plan. And actually during the week, people would hit me up and say, "Hey, you have any collages?" And I was like, "Hey, Friday." But it gave me room to paint too, because I didn't have to worry about like how I was gonna afford supplies or anything. I just knew every Friday I had $500 coming in. And I have not made a collage in the last 2 years, but it's a fun practice. I've been painting so much now, I love painting, so yeah. So these collages, if you have one, hold on to it.
These are true collector's pieces. And we've gone quickly through so much. So you mentioned high school, right?
Yes.
LaGuardia High School. This is a high school where thousands of teenagers apply to become students. Only a few are selected.
Yes.
And then you are there among some of the top, most talented young people there, right? And so this was before going into college, but when you decided to go to college, you went on a slightly different track.
Yes, so when I first got to college, my major was just art. And once again, I didn't know any artists. So then I found out if you wanted to teach art, you had to do art education. So I switched to art education. But senior year, while I'm student teaching, they made a mistake. They told me the salary that I will be getting. And once again, my life changed. There was no way I was going to work all year for that salary. So at the time I had a part-time job at a warehouse. It was $500 a week, which is funny because that number comes up in my life all the time. $500 a week, but I was only working like 4 hours a day. I would work there in the morning and go to class in the evenings. Well, me and my wife bought a house while I was in college working this job. And I talked to the management before we bought the house. I'm like, "Hey man, like I just want to make sure I'm doing a good job. I'm gonna be here for a while, making this big decision. I need my job." "Oh, we love you. Everything's fine." 2 weeks later, a new company comes in and they're like, "Hey Clarence, just gotta let you know, we sold the company." Like, I just talked to you 2 weeks ago about this. I was like, "Man, we're putting in good work for you. Don't worry, you're gonna be okay." Like, the new company comes and says, "Hey man, we heard you're great, but we need truck drivers." And at this time, I had just got my license. I'm from New York, 22. We don't drive, but yeah, we need truck drivers. We'll show you, we'll train you, but like, that's all we got for you. And then I remember their salary that I was gonna be making. And then they showed me what the new salary would be. And I was like, truck driving doesn't seem that bad. But then 12 years later, I'm 35, wondering what I was gonna do with my life. And my wife told me to be an artist. And now I'm here with you guys.
Gone ahead with that calling, and it is, I know, kind of a midlife crisis as you talk about making that decision, but it was obviously the right thing to do. So if we advance a little bit to a couple of these images, And just pause here for a moment. Oh, okay. Okay, that's all right. Well, let us talk here. So,
Okay.
because this was another sort of turning point while you were in the studio making work every day
Yes.
when this painting evolved.
Yes, so this is the first green painting I ever made, which actually was inspired by my wife too, because we had a bunch of conversations about the art world and painting brown skin, and how a lot of our favorite artists don't do that, and the reason why. And I argued a bit about it, but of course, I went to the studio and painted something different because your wife is always right? So I made this painting, and then I had a studio visit from another artist in Durham. I don't know if you guys know William Paul Thomas, but me and him became friends. So he came into the studio visit, and we were talking about like trading a piece. And I had this like sitting in the corner because I had been working on it. And he said, "Man, what is that?" I was like, "I don't know, it's green." So at the time I had an idea of, I was calling it Toy Soldiers, where I bought all these army men from like the dollar store, and I was gonna paint like black men in the forms of these army soldiers. But then I thought like, that's kind of corny, right? So I was scrolling through Instagram, and I found like this guy, and I was like, man, I want to paint him. Which is funny because when William came to the studio, he said, "That's a beautiful man." And I was like, I didn't want to say it, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I chose the subject. And then, like, I didn't know what to do with it. It just sat there for a while. And then George Floyd happened. And when George Floyd happened, I started looking up, like, green screen and the media and that kind of stuff. And then it clicked, like, that's why I painted this guy green. And I started looking up the technology, and then I came across, I made the next painting, which was like my first self-portrait in green, which kind of led me to where I am now too. So this painting is called Invisible Man. It was the first portrait I made in my first museum exhibition in 2022. But in chromakey technology, which is green screen, when you put layer green on top of green, it becomes invisible. So like when you see the weatherman doing the news, you've never seen him wear green, because whatever's green is gonna be invisible, and it's gonna be kind of scary. So if he wore a green shirt, you would just see the map on his chest. So I painted him myself in the same position that I last saw George Floyd in, that we all last saw him in. And I painted the background green because nobody saw him for who he was, and I wanted to evoke that same feeling. So this exhibition was based on, if this were to happen to me and my family, what would the outcome be? So there were portraits of my kids, portraits of my wife, my grandmother, like people from my community, just kind of telling the story. And the way I make work now is super linear, so it reads like a movie. And this was the first piece. And then exhibition, which someone purchased and tried to donate to the Minneapolis Museum, and they would not take it because they said it was treachery to the community. But it ended up in Denver, so it still went to the museum. But yeah, they got another painting, luckily. But
and they'll have the opportunity, Denver will, to travel this painting, and so hopefully people in Minneapolis will have that opportunity to see it. It seems a really vulnerable thing to choose a self-portrait and to portray yourself this way with that subject. This idea of making work about the Black experience, about your life, and some of the people that you choose to portray. You've mentioned family members and other individuals, so it evolved from celebrities and things like that early on into everyday people as the primary subjects for your portraits.
yeah, so 90% of it is everyday people that I have an experience with. So people that I interact with, people that inspire me, people, like, so it's usually direct friends, family, or some kind of connection. So it's not really random, unless it's like a random connection.
And you mentioned an artist that came over, right, to talk with you there. I know you're also in a studio space with others, as far as being an anchor light. Do you have any artists that are mentors to you now? I know not that long ago you sat down and had a conversation with Juan Logan, which many of us know and adore. Are there artists that are mentors to you at this time?
Yeah, so I talked to Juan some, I talked to Beverly McGregor a lot. Those are probably the two North Carolina artists that I talk to a lot. But like I'm in a group of black male artists that we meet once a month, and they're from all over the country. So we do like Zooms once a month.
What are some of those topics that you talk about from black male artists around the country?
We talk about everything, like we go to the barbershop. It's kind of like barbershop talk, actually. It's called Chop Shop. Actually, we have an exhibition scheduled at the Gantt Center in 2025. But yeah, it's just, like, there's so many people in there. It's like 20 of us, but I mean, it's a lot of names that everybody knows. I'm not gonna put anybody on the spot, they're not advertising it. But if you come to an exhibition, like, there's a lot of good artists. And we just, I mean, they're in every state, New York, North Carolina, Atlanta, Chicago. A lot of times we just share what we're working on, we do critiques. Yes, we share opportunities, like, it's super cool because like you don't really get that experience every day, and you have to be invited to be in the group. So the fact that I got an invitation, I was like, cool. And now it's like, yeah, it's kind of part of my practice now. Yeah.
Right. And again, I mean, it just goes back to how much your career has evolved in such a short amount of time. Maybe we'll take a look at the next slide. So talk to us a little bit about this next stage in your work.
So this is work from that exhibition with the Invisible Man. So this was my first museum exhibition in 2022 at CAM in Raleigh. It was called Unseen. So like, these are more portraits of like if that was to happen to me, what would the rest of life look like? Right? So like this is a picture of a painting of my daughter's. It's called Candyland. And it has the same stripes as Perceivable Caution, so it's kind of the same, made around the same time. But it's based on the game Candyland. I Googled it like I do everything else because we played it a couple times and I realized like there's no winner, right? You just keep playing. So I wanted to find out like there was like some hidden rules that I didn't know about. And you just, so if you have kids, you want to keep them busy, give them Candyland. But when I started thinking about like, hey, if I were to be murdered, like what would happen to my children at the time? And it was like they would be stuck in a real life game of Candyland where they just live life, but there's like no discipline or nobody to tell them like, stop playing Candyland. So I came up with this composition, and the stripes just represent like the colors of the board game. And once again, I have the variegated gold leaf to just represent the world that we're in, and it gives us some texture. And this painting is now in Dallas. I actually saw it over the summer.
It's beautiful. And tell me a little bit more about that with the variegated gold leaf and how it connects to the world.
So a lot of my paintings just have a black background, and I was searching for something because I hate, no offense, landscapes. But I didn't really want to define the environment. So as I was studying artists, my favorite artist is Barclay Hendricks. He used it, but he used it sparingly in his work. That's how I even stumbled upon the material. It's kind of expensive, so I ordered some, and I used a little bit like he did, and I was like, man, this is okay, but it can do something better. So actually, Candyland was the first time that I used a lot of it, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I'm never painting a background again. But I mean, of course I do, but it was the first time I used it, and then of course you have to sit and figure out why you're using it, and the reason why. And once I developed the reason why, I implemented it in some of my paintings.
It has such a beautiful otherworldly quality to it. It has texture. It adds something so precious to it also in terms of this very valuable material. And then of course these two very valuable humans that are there as the subjects in this first work. So it's interesting that that was one that you chose to use it with.
Yeah, and to me, it's like busy. The world is busy, so it just fits. And then this next one is called Everything is Everything, which is a portrait of my oldest daughter. We don't always connect. And I thought about when I was in high school, something that all the girls listened to, or like, I remember when Lauryn Hill came out, when I was in high school, every girl matured overnight and they kind of were confident and knew who they were. So I decided to, get it for my daughter. This portrait is not at the North Carolina Museum of Art on this one. So if you want to see it, it's on view now. But yeah, then her back is like against this crazy world. But if you see the red, black, and green books, which is, knowledge of self, we teach her culture. And then she has Lauryn Hill, so she can face the world, right? So,
I think she needs.
yeah.
It's beautiful. You go to the next.
Okay, so no one in Raleigh has really seen this work in Parkville. There's one collector in Raleigh who has one. But so this is a series that I take to our Basel every year. So it's been on the last 3 years in Miami. It's based on an experience that me and my family had at the Four Seasons in New Orleans. It's a long story. I don't know if I should tell it. I don't want to be banned. I don't want to be banned from the Four Seasons. It is a nice place, but. Okay, so a couple years ago we went and my kids were dying to have a day at the pool. And on the way to the pool, my wife was like, when we get to the pool, everybody's leaving. Full disclosure, we always go the week before Essence Fest. I'm really not gonna be able to go anymore. But we usually go the week before Essence Fest, and so before all the black celebrities come, we go. And so there aren't a lot of black people in the hotel this week, they will come the next week. So we kind of like, oh, we got the place to ourselves. Which this week, my wife was like, everybody's leaving when we get to the pool. So we get to the pool, there were like 6 or 7 black, well, non-black families. And I'm on my phone on Instagram because I can't swim, so I'm not getting in anybody's pool. But I'm lounging, and they get in the pool, and I look up after like 5 minutes. Everybody who was there left. So I was like, oh man, what's going on? Like, first of all, my wife is always right. And then second of all, like, how do I explain this to my kids? So I decided to make a series of paintings called Swimming Lessons, where I'm giving my kids life lessons, but I'm using swimming as the medium. And there's only a couple of paintings, so I mean, there have probably been 20 paintings so far in that series, because I take 7 or 8 to Miami every year. That's the painting that the Minneapolis Museum ended up acquiring, because that one, I guess, didn't trigger the community. But yeah, so that's actually what we were wearing that first time. And then we go back every year now, just so I can get more, like, I don't want to say inspiration, because it only happened at one time. Last year it was great, but I still get like, just different elements for compositions to make paintings, because there's still other lessons that I'm teaching my kids. So like this year when we go, it's probably gonna be all about like having fun and happy paintings. Usually they aren't happy paintings. So this year I'm gonna take the happy paintings and see how that goes. I'll let you know if it doesn't work. I'm gonna slow down on the happy paintings. But
Well, you definitely take on some strong subjects.
yes.
And again, and yet they're these absolutely beautiful works. There's also always, or often, some really graphic qualities in terms of using text and things like that, or certain symbols. Like I'm looking at the Nike graphic that's there in the portrait. Can you talk to us a little bit about the way that you use graphic elements in your work?
Well, part of that comes from in college. I took some graphic design courses, and I really wanted to be a graphic designer. But before that, nobody really knows this. I wanted to be a furniture designer, but I hate math, right? So I love interior design, but I'm not making any furniture. So I just use a lot of the graphic elements in my work based on my love for graphic design and like the media and print and like, yeah, it's all enveloping in my work.
And it certainly feeds into that idea of things that are familiar and part of our everyday lives, with seeing some of the text that's in these works as well.
Yeah, and I kind of like simplify everything. So like the black and white stripes come from the cabanas at the Four Seasons. Everything's black and white. Or like I really was wearing these shorts and that shirt sky was blue. So like, I just kind of simplified everything and put the stuff that I feel like needs to be there to tell the story. And then all the other noise I kind of leave out.
Well, you do distill it down to a very few
Yes.
elements into work that is incredibly powerful. Can we go on to the next slide?
Okay, so this is part of a series called In My Hood. So after Trayvon Martin was murdered, Geraldo was on television talking about how black men should not wear hoodies because as black men we're already threatening, and the hoodie just adds another layer of threatening. So as a, I don't want to say the word, but you know, to Geraldo, I decided to make a whole series of black men in hoodies. And I decided that there would be 50 because I wanted there to be a room full of us. And right now I think I'm on 36 or 37. But yeah, so I just decided. So the first one was me, which is in the corner where you can't see me, and I have it pulled. And then at first I was just doing the one, and it just didn't feel like enough. So I said, what if I do 50? And some of it was inspired by Titus Kafour's Jerome Project. So I saw his exhibition shot where he had like 100 or so portraits lined up in a row. And I was like, I want that shot. Like, I wanted to walk into an exhibition and see like 50 of my paintings on the wall, which was the strategy, but I don't know if that's gonna happen because they're all across the world right now, and I don't think I'm getting them back.
That's a good problem to have.
What we
though.
did, I mean, in the gallery, we did make everybody sign saying they will lend it back for an exhibition, but my gallery is not paying shipping for 50 portraits. I can guarantee that. I'm like, you can make another 50. I'm like, it's been 3 years, and I'm
But you are a very prolific artist. You're in the studio painting every day.
Yes.
So at some point, we do have to look forward to either these 50 paintings together or 50 more that you create. But
Yes.
as we look at this, I'm looking at the various facial expressions, the angles of each portrait, the way that you're using lighting on the faces. How are you making those choices with the images that you are choosing for the series?
All right. So these are all friends and family, people I know, and maybe 7 or 8 commissions where people see them and they're like, oh, I want my dad to be in there, I want work like that. As far as the lighting, I'm not a photographer. I will take 100 photos and the best one will get painted.
Well, whatever licenses you are taking, then with that initial photograph of your final works, they're just extraordinary.
Thank you.
And there's such a range of emotions across the faces that are here. And again, when I think about what it would be like to go into a gallery and confront this group of men, it's a very, very different experience than what we would have with a lot of other images of black men, and especially in popular culture.
Yeah, and these guys are like teachers and doctors and dentists, but like all a range of professions and people. So you can't look at one person in the hoodie and be like, oh, that's a bad guy. Like none of these are bad guys. Like they're all super cool and good people.
And again, the green to remind us of that green screen and what we project on
Yes.
the individual.
Yes. Oh, I'll let you know. Pretty much every painting from now will be green. Well, I mean, I travel a lot now, and everywhere I go, people know me, but they know the green, so like,
Yeah.
that's just get me in the room. So.
And we are so early in your career. Who knows where we will be? As a matter of fact, do you think a little bit about that? Is there something on the horizon for you that you're very excited for?
Yeah, I have a whole new series of paintings that I've been working on. I think I have like 10 of them so far. I don't have anywhere to show them yet. But, so they're all larger works, like 7:2 by 48, 7:2 by 60. Because when I just had a group show in New York, and I had some of my stop signs, which you'll see. So they were the smallest things there, and everybody kept asking me like, "Where's your big work?" And I'm like, "I make bigger work, man. Like, they only wanted to ship these. This is what you got." So when I came back to the studio, I kind of came back with a vengeance, and I went and got a van and got huge canvases and started making big paintings. But now I have a studio full of big paintings and nowhere to show.
I think the right ears are in the room to hear that. So let us go on to the next slide and let us see some of these other works that you're talking about. We'll get to the stop sign in just a moment.
Okay. So this is a series called About a Dream. So this was 2023. I had an exhibition at another institution where I had a residency, and I owed them a show. So the guy who does my framing actually has a studio at Raleigh too. He came in one day with this helmet and was like, "Hey man, you got kids, I know you want this helmet." I was like, they don't need a helmet, but all right, cool. So it sat in my studio for a long time. And for disclosure, the institution called and said, "Hey Clarence, we're coming by for a studio visit for your show." I'm like, "What show?" I'm like, "I got work, man. Not for the show." They're like, "Oh yeah, you're on the calendar for," it was like 2 months away. And I was just like, she was like, "Yeah, can I come like Tuesday?" And I was like, "No, come next Friday, come next Friday." So she came next Friday, and by then I had made 2 of the paintings. And I was like, "Well, this is what I'm thinking." And I started thinking about the helmet, and it reminded me of Evel Knievel. And I was like, "Oh, well, to be a daredevil, you have to be a daredevil to follow your dream." And then like this painting is me walking my job, right, in the office, unhappy, all that stuff. Until you strap the helmet on and then follow the dream. So the first 2 portraits were of my daughters, and then I just built the body work off of that. And actually, the glitter comes from, I went to Mark Logan's studio. He invited me to the studio and he had all the glitter and diamond dust. And I was telling him ideas and he was like, "Oh yeah," he told me with the vendor and everything. And I called him. And you have to order it by like 10-pound buckets. And I was like, "Dude, I need 3 paintings. I don't need 4. I told him to let me borrow some. He gave me the information, like, "Go get your own." So I ended up going to like Jerry's or something to get some glitter. It worked out. So that's why I had him moderate the talk, because he kind of inspired some of the work.
Right.
But yeah, so there's probably 10 or 15 paintings in this series, but I just gave a couple.
I'm so glad that this message of following your dream is coming back in this one, right? And let's use something like the symbol of that helmet as a reminder in these works. And you bring up your daughters a number of times. Can you tell us a little bit about the way that they support you in your work? We know your wife was pivotal for this life that you have now. How do your daughters support you in your work?
Okay, well, besides being my muses and probably being in every series, my oldest daughter, she takes a lot of my reference photos. So I guess she knows lighting better than me because she takes a lot of the photos. And then my youngest daughter, who spends a lot of time in the studio with me now, we actually have some pieces that we've collaborated on, which we'll get to in a minute. So yeah, we've been doing a lot together lately in the studio.
Yeah. So let us thank you. I love this idea that someone who was studying to be an art teacher, who took a completely different direction, is now raising these 2 potentially young artists, right? Who are part of your studio practice in many ways. Yes. And let us take a look at the next images, because we see your daughters here again.
Yes, so it's hard to tell on this, but so these masks that are on the children, they're actually glass. So they're mirrors, they're reflective. So this painting right there, I actually did a collaboration with Lauren. It's a portrait of Lauren wearing the glass mask. And the masks are mirrored because on the children, because I want people to see themselves in the eyes of children, and I want them to see that they play a role in who the children ultimately become. So I have a series of paintings where I'm wearing the camo mask, and it's almost reads as like a hardening, or like the world has made me this person, right? There's a war against black bodies in the country, and like this is the mask I wear now. For my children that grow up in the same era that I did, they don't have a lot of the same experiences I do. So I want people to see like you're part of the environment. You actually affect who they ultimately become. They don't ever have to get to the point where I wear this mask. So theirs is just like mirrored, and I just want people to, be able to sit with themselves in the art, look at the subjects in their eyes and feel it, and be happy, actually.
Thank you for that. I mean, there's some hope in that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you're dealing with sometimes some really difficult subjects in terms of the Black American experience. You're actually pulling across some pivotal things that have happened in our history. And in our exhibition, you're in the company of a wide range of artists, some of them African American artists that we would know, like Alison Sarr and Willie Cole and Sheila Bridges. What does it feel like to be in an exhibition with some of these artists who have come before you, with who you are and the work that you are doing now and the stories that you're telling?
I don't know if there's a right way to answer it. I'll say that it feels good, but then, man, how do I say this without sounding like a jerk? It feels like I'm supposed to be here. Like, yeah. And I know it sounds weird for somebody to say that, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it never feels unnatural to me anymore. Like, I guess I was nervous when I first started. But then once things started rolling, when I woke up to the room, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. Like, but it's partially because I know how much time I spend in the studio, I know how much I give to the work. I mean, I'm doing this like 24/7. Like, I go to sleep looking at art or thinking about art. I wake up thinking about art. I spend the day making art. So when all this stuff happens, it's like, oh, well, this happened. It's a result of this. Like, I don't know. It's like supposed to happen. So
Yeah, absolutely. And not only are you supposed to be there, you're situated beautifully among the other works. As everyone walks into the gallery, if you haven't been in the exhibition yet, you will see the work of Clarence Heyward just as you enter into the gallery. And to your right is the work of Willie Cole. And his ironing boards are almost like sentinels that welcome you or maybe protect the individual that's there. So you are absolutely in conversation with the other work that's in the exhibition, and it's exciting to see.
Thank you. I appreciate that placement too.
And I think we may have another slide after this.
Okay, so this is the latest work that I've released. It's not the latest work that I've done because I have 2 series in the studio after this. But this one is the last one I released, I think in Chicago at the expo, and then I was in a group exhibition the same week, like 2 shows at the same time. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this in public, but the first one, was purchased by somebody, doesn't it?
You can absolutely say it in public.
Okay, so Nick Cave bought the first one that I made. Yeah, that was surprising. Like, I saw him and I said hi, and then the guy was like, hey man, you know Nick Cave bought your work? I was like, oh, thanks, appreciate it. So, I mean, that felt good too. Like, this is Nick Cave, like, you know, he could buy anybody. So, but yeah, this work is called Utilitarian, so I'm referencing the Terry stop. Basically, the stop and frisk policies that were implemented in 1992 by Rudy Giuliani. They're kind of bringing them back now. So to me, it was a good time to make this work. And I guess the universe spoke to me because I went to an art store, a random art store, and they had an octagon panel on the floor. And I was like, oh, this is different, let me buy it. So I got it, and it's at my studio, and I'm making other paintings, and I was looking down one day, and I was like, man, it looks like a stop sign. And then your mind starts working the way it does, and the first portrait was of me, and I made it, and I was like, man, this would be a cool series. So then I went back to the store and bought 8 more, and then they couldn't make them fast enough, so I called fabricators and got 8 more. So I mean, I'll probably make 20 at this point, and now I have some some big ones, like 48-inch ones that I've made. So that's another exhibition that has nowhere. So I mean, the way I work is like I'm in the studio every day, so I just make work, and like. Of course, I feed my gallery when they need work, but for the most part, I just live with it until opportunities come, or like museums call, or galleries call and say, hey, you know, a museum is looking for a piece from you, and then I'm like, oh, well, I have a few pieces. So I tell everybody to stay ready so you don't have to get ready, and I have so many ideas, so it's a job to me. So I'm just in the studio every day working. So I got work, and I have stop signs.
And I know we were chatting about that earlier, that while you spent 12 years in the trucking industry, it was also preparing you for a lot of the business skills that you have as an artist. You applied them immediately in terms of talking with people, your discipline in the studio.
Yes, so those 12 years in YouTube taught me that art is a business, so I'm not afraid to talk to people about my work. I'm not afraid to talk about money. I'm not afraid to talk about why things cost, what they cost. I'm not afraid to talk about payment plans. Like, I'm not afraid really of anything in regards to art being a business, which to me gives me a little bit of an advantage, because when I talk to the artists coming to the studio now, nobody wants to talk about that part. And it's like, well, how do you eat? Right? Well, it's like, at this point, no offense, if you can't talk about money, you can't get paid. If you can't get paid, you're not gonna be an artist for long, right? Like, so if you want to be an artist, that's one of the most important parts. Like, we all make it because we love it, cool, but then what do you do with it? So I've kind of structured my practice to figure out what to do with it. Yes, I work in the studio, but it's by choice, right? I have places I can give it to, but I also don't want a lot of work just sitting on the market. So I hold it and I let it out when it needs to be released.
Those are such savvy decisions that you're making, again, so early and very thoughtfully with your work. And it's exciting how fearless you are, you know, in your practice. And I know we have at least one more slide, I think, with work.
Oh, back to the business. If you don't follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is right there. You can find tons of work. You can find actually the early work. So if you want to know what it looked like in the beginning, before it was free, it's on there. I don't delete it. I'm honest with everything. My website is on there, so if you want to see like the full exhibitions or exhibition photos and that kind of thing, all that's on there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Several ways, but it's usually scissors, an X-Acto knife, and glue.
So where do you get your images?
Sometimes you take photos. I mean, you get source material. If I tell you the source material, your collage is gonna look like mine. But you can get newspapers, magazines, try to find some archival sources so they last.
Thank you. And
I'm so interested in the gold leaf. Can you talk more about how you do that background?
Yes. With the regular gold leaf or the variegated gold leaf? I mean, you apply them the same.
So is this drawn? Is this drawn and painted? The background? Did you get to one of those backgrounds and?
No, is it painted? No. It's gold leaf.
Okay.
So you apply it. Well, some people use rabbit glue. I save the animals. I just use glue and gold leaf adhesive, and you put it down. Well, it takes practice, but you put it down. Put the gold leaf on. I mean, I have some things that I don't tell people about. Right? And then you seal it, and.
But the designs and the.
So there's variegated gold leaf, so you can buy it with a burnt color into it. So there's a red version, a blue version, a copper, there's a white version, there's a black version. A lot of people don't get it because it's expensive and you get it from like Germany. I'm telling trade secrets here. But I mean, like I told you earlier, I can give you the ingredients, but you gotta make the sauce, right? Yeah, so it's just variegated gold leaf. If you look it up, you can find it.
And we'll take a close look at the work when we're there in the gallery. I think you'll see the surface of some of what he's talking about with the materials. Is there one other question?
Before you became rich and famous, what encouragement did you have to become an artist when you were a kid in Brooklyn? Were there other kids? Was there an art school? Were there a lot of other truck driver art artists that you hung out with? What encouraged you, besides your own self, which is clearly very strong, what other influences encouraged you to become an artist?
Well, that's a two-part question. So when I was young, I thought I could do anything, right? Like I thought I was gonna make the NBA. So as far as art was concerned, yes, I was like really good when I was looking at my friends. So I was like, oh, I can be an artist. But in college, when you realize like the money aspect of it, it was just like, I don't want to be an artist because I don't want to be hungry. Then when I hit 35, it was just like, the only thing I know how to do is be an artist, right? I don't have anything else. Like, I don't want to get religious and everything, but I went to church and they started talking about like the sons of the talents and all that stuff, and I was like, I buried my talent. I don't know what else to do. Let me be an artist. And once I did it and it started working, it was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I didn't really think about being rich and famous. I just thought about not being hungry. And I wouldn't say I'm rich and famous, but hope one day, right?
I know you mentioned a grandmother who was very supportive also.
I think that's why the story of the talent struck, because my grandma was super religious. But yeah, she didn't really push me towards art. She just said, you need to make art. To glorify God and stuff. But that's a whole different story. That's a whole different story.
That's a serious potential. So.
Maybe. Maybe. But yeah, no, actually, when I was a truck driver, one day I picked up canvases when I knew I was going to quit. And they looked at me like I was crazy, like, what are you doing with those? And I was like, oh, I draw. And they was just like, you draw? Like, nobody at work ever knew, like, I painted or I drew or did anything, but they know now.
Well, I won't hold you here any longer. I want us all to enjoy the work in the gallery, and then also to have a moment to speak with Clarence in person. So again, thank you all for joining us.